Ahoy, ahoy! We are here at Gowanus Mirror talking to Brad.Vogel of the Gowanus Dredgers. Hi, Brad.
Hi, it's great to see you. Thanks for having me.
It's totally a pleasure. Please introduce yourself.
Sure. My name is Brad.Vogel, and I'm the captain of the Gowanus Dredgers Canoe Club. And I live here in Gowanus, and it's really exciting to be in Gowanus these days because there is so much going on all the time. And some of that's out on the canal, some of that's on land, but I like being in both places as someone who's part of a canoe club that's so much more than a canoe club.
Yeah, so that's the Gowanus Dredgers. Can you tell us about
Sure.
them?
So the Gowanus Dredgers started in 1999, and it's a canoe club. We're called the Dredgers because we wanted to emphasize the need to dredge the Gowanus Canal because it has all of these toxins down in the bottom, the black mayonnaise. And we're really excited because in about a month, the actual dredging is finally set to start.
Oh, really?
So,
and
yeah.
what will that mean? What will they be doing?
So there will be a huge fleet of barges and tugboats and cranes that move into the canal, and they'll start at the head of the canal and start actually excavating and digging out all of this industrial toxins down at the bottom. So that's an important milestone, and it's taken a while to get there, but we're finally on the cusp of it.
Wow, that's exciting. So the Dredgers are a canoe club, and you go out canoeing on the canal on
We
this
do, yes.
super fun site.
Yes, it is super fun, and it is a super fun. And it's, I would say it's the world's most tranquil extreme sport.
Amazing. Speaking of extremity, you mentioned something called extremophiles?
Yes.
Can you tell us about those?
Right, so down in that layer of muck that's very heavily polluted, called black mayonnaise at the bottom of the canal, in 2015, scientists were studying some of the samples from down in that layer, and they found DNA that they could not classify. And so it's basically new species of extremophiles, which means creatures that are able to live in extreme conditions. So these are things called archaea, and that these are things that live in deep sea vents and in geysers. In the Gowanus, they're living down in like very sulfurous conditions and very toxic conditions, but they can actually adapt and start to process some of that pollution.
Wow.
Yeah, so
that's
Gowanus
amazing.
is definitely home to some very strange things. I mean, we have some extremophiles in our canoe club as well, I will say, but that's why I love it.
Right.
The same with our neighborhood here in Gowanus. I think it's a place that fosters interesting people and a sense that it's good and it's okay to be yourself and to be a little eccentric maybe, or a little whimsical.
Wonderful. I don't know what you're talking about. So, are you from Brooklyn originally?
I'm not. I actually came to New York from New Orleans. I'm originally from Wisconsin, but part of coming to Gowanus was finding a place that reminded me in some ways of some of the best elements of post-Katrina New Orleans. It's a place that was not sort of fully finished. There's a chance to sort of bubble up with the place as it changes, as it grows. And it's a place where there's a little bit of a feral quality around the edges, if you will.
Absolutely, yeah.
Definitely something that attracted me to Gowanus, and the ability to go canoeing, quite frankly, and still be in the city. It was a really interesting sort of equilibrium. And as someone who likes to canoe, I'm all about balance. Because if you don't have balance, you're going to tip.
Yeah, and you've talked about this a little bit already, but what do you love about the canal?
I love that the canal is ever changing. It's really like a Monet haystack or the facade of a cathedral. Monet could go back and paint those things over and over and over again because there was always something new. The light was different, the time of day was different, the season was different. And with the canal, it's so good in its weird quicksilver way of showing and reflecting those changes. And there's something new that comes in with the tide, or something that's revealed when the tide goes out, and you see different layers of history. To me, it's endlessly fascinating, as polluted as it is, and as dangerous as it is in some ways. It certainly never lacks for interest.
That's a beautiful way of looking at it. And I think that there are also, in addition to the extremophiles, there are other wild creatures that respond to this place in a way that they don't necessarily come out elsewhere in
That's
New
absolutely
York City.
true. And you walk over the bridge in Gowanus and you smell the smell if it's low tide, or you see the big swirls of coal tar, sort of iridescence on the top of the water. And a lot of people think this is a poisoned place, life doesn't exist here. But once you're out canoeing on the water, you see increasingly that there's all kinds of life that's somehow eking out an existence here, not just the extremophiles, but ducks and herons and kingfishers and geese and fish of all kinds, and mussels. There's ribbed mussels that actually wedge themselves into the bulkheads of the canal, and they do filtering. So yeah, it's kind of remarkable. And crabs and even little mud snails, some places in the muck, if you see it at the right time or the right day, all of a sudden what looks like nothing has thousands of mud snails slowly grazing over the surface under the water.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. And recently some raccoons, I believe.
Oh yes, definitely some raccoons. So the canal is really changing. The bulkheads are getting replaced, the old wood and stone bulkheads, which is where a lot of these animals love to live. Those are changing. They're getting replaced with these sort of sheer steel bulkheads. And that's needed, in the EPA's opinion, to make the cleanup happen of the canal. But it's definitely changing the canal. So this is part of the ongoing story of Gowanus, of what comes next. But I take hope, knowing Gowanus and people in Gowanus, that we will find some creative way to get around even those steel bulkheads and make sure that life still has a little perch somewhere.
Yeah. Let's hope for that, and let's plan on that.
Yes.
Who are the Gowanus dredgers?
Right, so it's we have over 100 paid members But as with a lot of groups, there's kind of a core group that comes together and actually does a lot of the programming and the events and just makes things happen. So we have some people, like there's a guy named Owen Foote who's been around forever, who is really one of sort of the backbones of the club, and he was one of the founding members, and Owen, is essential in kind of making sure a lot of our programming happens. But we have interesting people like a cartographer, we have someone who has done fire dancing, we have people who are journalists, we have people who know how to carve wooden spoons. Whatever you need. I like to think of our canoe club sometimes as a bit of a stem cell. Whatever the occasion requires, whatever type of organ we need to become, we rapidly evolve into that thing.
Adapt into it. Fantastic.
Yes.
So what do you do? What do the Gowanus dredgers do?
Right, so it can range from anything like during the core of the pandemic back in the spring, we basically became like a cheerleading and morale boosting group for the neighborhood, and we raised funds for Arts Gowanus and tried to help out small businesses. And but during our sort of normal programming, we are doing all kinds of interesting things. And that's another great thing about the club, is that if you join and you have an idea that's loosely involved with what we do and you want to push it and make it happen, go right ahead. So we have one person, Liz Rabson-Schnorr, who does a lot of our music. So we have a thing called Creekers Jamboree, which is musicians playing in the boathouse or outside the boathouse these days. And we have all kinds of things. We just had a big event with a brass band, 15-person brass band in canoes after dark, floating around on the Gowanus Canal, playing to audiences on the bridges and the esplanades, and it was amazing. Wonderful, unique sort of dawn experience as people are standing on a bridge, listening to people in canoes read poems to them. We have paddle-in movies where people paddle their canoes down the canal. They line up in one of the little basins and they watch a movie projected onto a warehouse wall. There's even a snack barge that weaves its way through the crowd.
What are your hopes and dreams for this place?
That is such a good question. My hope is that even as change comes to the neighborhood, that it will retain its capacity to be interesting and to be distinctive in the face of major change, because right now what makes the neighborhood so intriguing to people, it seems, is, certainly to me, is the cheek by jowl nature of things here. The fact that you can walk down a several block stretch of the neighborhood and you see a casket company, a tea and sake house like Mirror Tea House.
Yeah.
You can see a souvenir shop and an ice cream shop and a potter. Like, there's a variety of things. And I think importantly too, there are doors behind which you see activity on occasion and you don't even know what it is. Or you see doors that are never open during the times that you walk by. And then 3 years later, you finally happen to be running an errand at 11 o'clock on a Thursday, and you go by and that one metal door is rolled up for the first time. And you peer in and you're like, ooh, I'm finally getting a glimpse. And I love how the neighborhood retains some secrets like that in its diversity so that it never grows old. It's always interesting. It's always got a little more to tell. And so I hope that we do not lose that quality of the neighborhood as it changes, because I think there's a tendency these days to not change in an organic way that sort of slowly builds or gradually builds and allows people to anchor themselves in a place and accept and grow with and grow into change. There's a tendency these days, I think, to come in, clear cut the land, and replace in whole in a way that's very alienating both to the land itself and the landscape, but then also to the people and to the community. And so making sure that we do our best as Gowanusians to try and keep some of that, I think, extra sort of je ne sais quoi, that extra special something about Gowanus in the mix is what I want.
Yeah, the spirit of the place. May it endure. Brad.Vogel of the Gowanus Dredgers. Ahoy, Captain. Thank you so much.
Thank you.